Oh, this. Okay. Do I do it this way or that way or? Yeah. Get all that together. My goodness, I'm looking good. Like it's TikTok. Hello, everybody. Let me turn it this way so that we don't have any unnecessary distractions there. And you can see my poster in the back over there. Over here, over here. Yeah, poster over here. Golly. Let's get this started. Today we're going to have an interesting topic. Let me see. I think I can share a screen. I just want to see. Okay, actually, I can share a screen here. Fantastic. Hello, 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 everybody. I know I've been missing in action. So, welcome to Roxy. Welcome to the family. And I hope it is a fruitful joining. Welcome to Elder Light, to Sunshine Toasty Grandma in Victoria, Texas, to Lady Diana, to those of you lurking in the background. Remember to give the video a thumbs up. Remember to give it a like so that the platform will let other folks know the class has started. Okay. Hello, Ms. Rosemary Allen. Hello, Leonard. Remember to give it a thumbs up. Remember to give the class itself a thumbs up, not just in the comments, but the class itself a thumbs up. So that lets YouTube let folks know that class has started. Missing in action. Hello, Jenny Barker. Hello, Ms. Mary. Yes. I know I've been missing in action. I've been like crazy busy. But it's all a good kind of busy. Good kind of busy. Remember to give us a thumbs up if you enjoy this content, if you enjoy the material that I put out, if you'd like to see more of it, I would appreciate the thumbs up. And what I'm doing now is I'm going back to basics. So I'm starting back at YouTube where I started. So no TikTok today, no Instagram, no Facebook. We're just focusing on YouTube. Okay. And then we're going to go back to the other platforms. But for now, we are focusing on YouTube because it was just like too many things I was juggling. Okay. All right. So thank you for coming to class today. I know that you did have choices of what you could do today, but you chose to come to class. Starting a little bit early to give people time to come, because usually when I start on time, some people will show up 15 minutes or 20 minutes late. So that's why I kind of fired up the machines a little bit earlier just to see if this kind of helps so that we can start the class on time and end on time. All right. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Tochi, aka Papa Dr. Tochi, Mama of the men's and the women's. Be sure to get your drink, your snack, your notebook, and your pen. For today's class, we're going to learn something interesting. We're going to learn about servitors. Okay. Some of you may have heard of servitors, and some of you may not have heard of servitors. But be that as it may, it's a very interesting topic. And join me in welcoming Roxy to the family. And so a bonus for those of you who showed up early. All right, let's take a moment to ground ourselves. So it might take a moment, take your shoes off, lay your feet flat on the ground and get grounded. Ground yourself with me. There's a lot going on in the world right now. So I invite you to breathe with me. Inhale through your nostrils and exhale through your lips. Hold on. I want to elevate this device. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to use my blood pressure medication thing to elevate it because I'm like looking down like this into it. Yeah, so you should be able to see me better this way. Hopefully my whole getup doesn't tip over. I'll bring that a bit closer. Okay, so let's inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. And feel yourself ground through your feet. Feel yourself become calmer, more centered, and more grounded. We call on our Creator, our guardian spirits, our ancestors, and our spirit guides to surround us with protection, love, guidance, and all that we need as we navigate these perilous times when others are making decisions for us, making decisions on our behalf that we do not want to be part of. We ask to be protected and let it be registered in the ethers as to what we agree to and what we don't agree to. And we ask to be protected from that of which we know nothing of, especially when it concerns the welfare and the survival and the well-being of others. Let us be protected from decisions that interfere with the welfare, well-being of others on a massive scale. Ashe. Okay, so let's go ahead and start today's class. So some of you may or may not have heard of servitors. Okay. Servitors. Okay. Those of you who are in my advanced classes know of servitors. We have done servitor rituals. So you are familiar with this topic, but we're going to go a little bit into some theory behind it. So you can use the information in this class to supplement what you already know about servitors. Servitors, Servitor. And for clarity, I may be switching accents because I am aware that some of you are watching me from parts of the world that may benefit from me switching up my language, switching up my accent. So as necessary, I will do that to facilitate learning. Okay. So a servitor in generally, a servitor in general is an intentionally created thought form, and it's created for a task. You don't just create a servitor and say, do everything and anything. They are like activated thought forms that we create as spiritual practitioners and students to perform a specific task. So it is a creation of mind. Some of us create servitors knowingly, and some of us create them unknowingly. And as we go through this class, you will understand what I mean by that. Okay. There are different kinds of thought forms out there, different classifications of thought forms. So there's servitors, there's egregores, um, different kinds of thought forms. But in today's class, we're going to be focusing on servitors. Servitors are not spur guides. So let's get that clear and out of the way. They are not spur guides. Spur guides already exist. We come here, we incarnate, we reincarnate, and we meet spur guides. The spur guides already working on the earth have their own functions as assigned by the Creator. But we are many creators as well. So that's why we have the ability to create servitors. So servitors are not as powerful and far-ranging as your average spur guide. And remember, your spur guides include your ancestors, those in charge of the elements, deities, gods and goddesses. But servitors are just thought forms. Now, there are schools of thought that posit or put forth that spur guides are actually the original thought forms. Okay, because we're created from the thought of a creator or the creator. And there are discussions around how did spirit guides come about. So when someone says, hey, I'm working with a spirit guide or that spirit guide, or my lineage has the spirit guide or that spirit guides, then the question becomes, how did these spirit guides emerge? How did they come to be? How did they come to be in place? Okay. So we could look at servitors from a clarifying point of view, like many spirit guides, but they're not spirit guides. They're thought forms. If you and I think of something hard enough, long enough, in the proper way, we can activate it, that thought, and have it work for us. Okay? And we're going to examine that in this class. People create servitors for a number of reasons. Okay? So people will create servitors for creating wealth, prosperity, for health, for protection. A lot of them are created for protection. Some are created just to help people focus, for guidance, for revealing information. Okay. Uh, Servitors, they can be created for practically any reason, anything that you need to have accomplished. Okay. Some people will create servitors for attraction, for helping them find things, find love, find partners. Okay. And in this digital age, I am made to understand that some are even creating digital servitors. Though, when we look at the definition, thought form, you see that it doesn't exactly apply. So they try to create a digital equivalent of a servitor. Okay. to help them with whatever they're doing with their technology. But it's more like a filter, more less than an actual servitor. Okay. Now, who are the people who typically use or create servitors? The creation of servitors, I believe, we hear mention of it in the grimoires of Kabbalists. Okay. We hear mention of it in the journals of explorers, those who went to different lands to observe different cultures. So, explorers, anthropologists, sociologists, people who went to investigate other cultures, and they started seeing things in those cultures that they could not explain with the knowledge of the time, the knowledge they had at that time. Okay. So, in modern days, we have people who practice chaos magic, and I already have a free YouTube video on that topic. So if you're interested, you can go watch that topic. I made that video class a couple of years ago. Chaos magicians use servitors quite a bit. Kabbalists use servitors quite a bit. Those into occult magic, okay, use servitors quite a bit. And some pagans and neo pagans use servitors quite a bit. And ordinary people like you and I also use servitors once we know the technique, how to use servitors, okay, how to create them and how to use them to accomplish tasks. Okay. I'd like you to consider servitors as helpers. Imagine you being able to create your own helper. Okay. Now, of course, we can start questioning what kind of help are we talking about here? Is it a good kind of help or not so good kind of help? And that's a conversation for another day. Okay. Excuse me. But be it as it may, the main function of servitors is to help us. That's their main function. Okay. They, if they're properly created, they can help us do things that we cannot physically do, or help us do more of what we can physically do. And I'm taking my time to explain this topic because I know there's some people who are going to come after this and put comments down and start writing some imaginative things. So I'm taking my time to explain this topic so that you can understand and not get confused by armchair experts. Okay. Because sometimes that happens. People will come and then they'll say, "No, let me tell you what this thing is," and they've never created one in their life. Many modern chaos magicians and occultists create servitors uh, on the regular. Some will create them to make them available for their use only, or some will create them to be available for anyone to use. But when they're created with boundaries, what they will do and what they will not do, what they can do and what they cannot do. And we're going to go into that in detail. So some people will just create a servitor and say, okay, just do this work for me. And some other people are like more altruistic, and they're like, you know what, I want to create a servitor or servitors, many servitors that will help people accomplish things. Okay. So again, if you're going into servitor creation, there has to be a purpose. You can't say, oh, just I'm just gonna have a servitor that does anything and just everything in there. No, it has to have a specific purpose. Some people do have an idea that a servitor is like Aladdin's genie in the bottle, or genie in the lamp. You know, you rub the lamp 3 times and the genie pops out. And then it says, well, master, you have 3 wishes, you know. Servitors are not visible, generally speaking, but they can make their presence known and they can make their presence felt. Okay. Again, depending on the parameters under which they were created. Like, for instance, if you look at the Nkisi of the Congo, and for those of you who don't know where Congo is in Africa, Central Africa. There are Nkisis that are created, and they will function at a certain time, in a certain way, in certain places, and they will be activated and deactivated. You see examples of them also in the masquerades of Togo and Benin Republic. Some of you might have seen that on Instagram or TikTok. They'll have some grass on the ground or some cloth or rag looking things on the ground, and the practitioner will come with some alcoholic drink, spray it around, and do 1 or 2 things, put it under the cloth or put it under what looks like a heap of grass, and the whole thing will be activated and start dancing around. In general parlance, people will say, oh, that's a deity. You know, that's a spirit guide. Oftentimes, they are servitors, and their function is to dance and to entertain. Okay. That's their function, just to dance, to entertain, to mystify their audience. And the person that controls a servitor knows what to do to activate and deactivate that servitor. Servitors require a form through which they can act. So you will see people drawing out or sketching out what they want their servitor to look like, or they will sketch out or draw out representations of the servitor. This becomes the container through which the servitor acts. Okay. So this container or form is what enables the creator of the servitor to interact with the servitor. But remember, the servitor is just a thought form, but a very powerful and activated thought form. Okay. Servitors are given names. You have to have a way to identify the servitor. You have to have a name so that you have a way of addressing the servitor. You can't just say, hey, servitor, come over here. Hey, servitor. Mm-mm. The servitor has to have a name. Okay. And the name not only serves to identify the servitor, but also saves to safeguard the creator of the servitor and other people. Okay. Because you do not want to be creating a servitor called servitor. And if someone happens to visit you at home and accidentally mentions servitor, and then your servitor becomes active just because the person came into your home and said, oh, do you have some servitors around here? And maybe they meant to say servants or service or something and accidentally said servitor. And then your servitor is like, okay, someone just called me. I need to start acting up now. Okay, so that's why you want to have a specific name for it. Oftentimes, the servitor is anchored to their container or to the image because they have to have somewhere from which to start operating. Okay, so there are some servitors that are attached to sigils, to symbols, and if you're unfamiliar with sigils and symbols, I will recommend you watch my video class on sigils and symbols. Okay. People can create a symbol, a sigil of some sort, and anchor their servitor to it. They can have an image. I can say, I want my servitor to be like an elf with dark skin and golden eyes and blue hair. And I go ahead and create that image. I might have it drawn out. Maybe I sketch it out by hand or do it on my computer and say, this is my servitor and this will represent my servitor. So anytime I'm interacting with that image, my servitor will be activated. The Nkisi, the Congo Nkisi are usually in a container. Okay. So that container will have things in it and the whole thing, container and the contents, and we're going to discuss that a little bit more, serve as the anchor for the servitor. Okay. Now, we know that we live in an energetic universe. Everything, everything, with no exception, feeds on energy in this universe where we are. We feed on energy. Our spirit guides feed on energy. And so servitors are no exception. But the real interesting thing is that it is the person who creates the servitor who defines what fuels or energizes that servitor. So the person says, I will feed you with praise. I will feed you with attention. I will feed you with incense. I'll feed you with candlelight. They choose. And that becomes one of the conditions for that servitor to be active and complete their task. So you promise it. If you do this, I will give you that. And some of you remember I talked about spirituality being transactional. And it comes to play with servitors. In order for it to keep on doing what you need it to do, you have to give it something. But you choose what you give it. Okay. And sometimes people can go overboard with that. Okay. But many simple servitors, especially those that are created to help a lot of people, can get fed very well from very simple things like attention, like praise, like candles and flowers and incense and things like that. Again, depending on what the creator of the servitor defined as the fuel for that servitor. Okay. Servitors have to have boundaries. They have to have limits. What it can do, what it cannot do. Servitors have kill switches. What is a kill switch? I do this thing and it's over. It disappears. It no longer exists. And as the creator of the servitor that usually defines what the kill switch is. So let's say I created a servitor and I put it out here and I said, all of you can use this servitor. I would have the kill switch for that servitor. Any day I wake up and say, okay, that's it. I activate that kill switch and that servitor stops existing. It just stops existing. Now, are there some servitors that can kind of get beyond that? Yes, in a number of ways. So let's say, for instance, someone created a servitor and they passed away without telling anyone what the kill switch is. And people have been but the person told people how to feed the servitor, but they never told people what the kill switch for that servitor is. That servitor can get bigger and bigger until it becomes lifelike. And there are examples of lifelike servitors, for instance, in the Tibetan tulpas. Okay. There were explorers, anthropologists who went to Tibet back in the day, and there were demonstrations. Okay. Now imagine that someone creates that kind of servitor and passes away without telling anyone, here's the kill switch to this thing. That thing will keep on existing as long as it's being fed. It will keep on doing what you want it to do or what it's supposed to do, what the task is supposed to be. It will keep on doing it. So you feed it, you tell it what to do, it will do that thing. And when you start thinking about that, I want you to start thinking about circumstances where we're thinking that a spirit guide is operational, but a spirit guide is not operational, it's actually a servitor. Maybe an ancient servitor. And you can have this in rural areas and countrysides, in certain places where people who created these servitors lived so long ago. And they had the kill switch, but they didn't want that servitor to die. They didn't want that servitor to be terminated. So they didn't tell anyone what the kill switch was. All they did was they told people how to feed that servitor. So that servitor ends up being like a spirit guide. And you have generations upon generations of people feeding it, and it just continues. On the other hand, you have situations where people stop feeding a servitor and it just quietly fades away. Maybe that information was not transmitted how to feed the servitor. Maybe the people or person who created it during their time, they were doing everything to maintain the servitor. And then when the next generations come, maybe they converted to some religion or moved away or something like that. And that servitor was no longer fed, especially community servitors, servitors that were created to perform certain tasks for the community or for a family. And so if the information is not passed along as to how to feed this thing, how to maintain it, it will just simply pass away, just fade into nothingness. But you could have some families and communities that are given the information how to feed this thing, and they keep on feeding it, and it keeps on activating until it becomes so strong. And at some point it seems to it starts acting like AI. And some people are saying, well, the AI we have today can be considered a form of a servitor, digital servitor, because we've created the AI, we feed the AI with data, lots of data sets, and we're at the point now where AI can respond to us. No one sees AI, no one has seen AI, but we interact with AI through AI agents or through the website or through apps. So we talk to the AI, AI talks back to us. But what makes AI work is the data that is fed to it on a constant basis. So, for instance, if you have Open AI, you have Gemini AI, and all DeepSeek, and they create this AI and say, your food source is the internet. Just go there and acquire as much information as you can. And we also are creating you in such a way that anytime somebody comes to you, interacts with you, asks you a question, provides information to you to enable you answer their question, you will take up all those things as data. That's feeding the AI. That's feeding a digital servitor. And so I can go to Chat GPT and I can type in something and say, oh, I want you to plan a holiday for my family and I in Bali. And because it has access to unlimited access to information on the internet about Bali, about Thailand, about people who've gone, taken pictures and whatnot, it will come back in a few seconds with information that I need. And it will keep on being fed because there's billions of pages of information that are being created every single day on the internet. So the food source for AI is infinite. So there are some people who have created servitors, okay, for their communities and their families, and they basically put it down and say, you need to be offering it this or offering it that. And maybe they didn't so much put it to their communities that the servitor is a thought form, but they may have presented that servitor once they figured out how to create the servitor, and once they ensure that the servitor works and does as instructed, then they present this to their family or to their community as a spur guide. And they say to the family of the community, feed this thing in this specified way and it will do this thing for you. So, and then people in that family or that community, they're like, okay, we need protection from our enemies. And our head person said, we can call on this guide. And as long as we give this guide this particular thing, it will do its job of protecting us. And so they try it out and they find out that it works. And everybody bows down and says, oh, great spirit guide. But in reality, it was a thought form, a servitor, a servitor that got activated and no one knows what the kill switch is. And sometimes in some communities, if they can't figure out how to dispose of a so-called spur guide or servitor, they will go put it out somewhere. and hope that it withers away. But depending on how strong that thing is, it may not wither away. It might now start looking for fuel. It might be like AI saying, well, you can't abandon me out here with no source of nourishment. I'm going to go out on my own and get fed. And so the thing starts going around looking to get fed. An example of a servitor some of us might identify with is like the Hobbit. Is it what was that creature in Lord of the Rings? The one that had the ring before, um, the one that kept saying my precious," and it was actually no. Let me take that back. Remember that creature that had the ring actually used to be a hobbit or something. And then the ring transformed it into a creature. Gollum, thank you. It was a healthy hobbit or something. And then it became so obsessed with that ring. And that ring was a form of a servitor until that hobbit became possessed by the servitor. And then it was turned into a miserable creature. And that golem, its function now was to go around finding ways to preserve, keep, and feed the ring, even if it meant taking out other folk. But there's something interesting about golem. Okay, in I don't know if a lot of people know that golem, Golem, the golem are actually considered animated anthropomorphic beings in Jewish folklore, created from clay. So when you start looking into Jewish folklore, Jewish stories, you will hear the stories of the golem. And golem were usually created by rabbis who were very versed in the occult. And they would take some clay or some earth and use it to form a human like figure, hence anthropomorphic. And then they would breathe life into it or animate it. But again, the golem were created to perform certain tasks. So you would have an occultist of a rabbi who had occult information would say, okay, I want to create a golem that will go and bring information. Maybe we're living in a dangerous area, so I wanted to go around and collect information and let us know where is safe and where is not safe. Or I want one to tell me who has money and who doesn't have money, where to get money, to go get me some gold. And so I will encourage you to do that research. Just go online and look up the golem, Golem, Jewish golem. Okay. So, and there are some really interesting stories about some good golem that were created and some not so good golem that were created. So you see that character in Lord of the Rings, you see that there's a connection there. There's a reason why it was called the golem, because the ring ended up making a golem out of a real hobbit. Okay. And then now you have the other folks trying to grab the ring and take him out. But the ring, now everybody wanted that ring. That ring was a servitor. Whoever held that ring, it would serve. And the instructions were written on the ring. How to use it was written on that ring. Okay. So if you're still awake and following what's going on, let's have your IAYE in the comment section. I want to make sure people are still functioning, still awake and functioning. Okay, thank you, Roxy. Thank you, Mr. Peter. Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Elder Light. Thank you, Elder Blessings. Thank you, Miss Rosemary. Thank you, Lady Dana. Thank you, Michi M. Thank you, Leonard. Thank you, Jenny Balker. Thank you, Miss Rashida. Okay. So we have about 12 people who are awake. Okay, all is well. So remember that a servitor is a thought form activated by a human. Okay. It's considered to be conscious. An egregore. An egregore is another form of thought form, similar to a servitor. But the difference between the servitor, and an egregore is that while the servitor is typically created by one person, an egregore is created by a group of people. So an egregore can also be a thought form, but is created by the collective mind of the group. And it will also have consciousness of its own at some point and become more independent and more responsive to the needs and demands of the group. It is said that a lot of deities were created that way. Remember, I mentioned that earlier. A lot of what we consider today to be spirit guides and deities, gods and goddesses, were created that way. And many of what we worship in our churches today are actually egregores. And they have been fed by thousands of years, hundreds of years of attention. That's what it feeds on. You pay attention to it, you worship it, you call on it, you cry to it, you shed tears to it. You allow your emotions, you know, remember there are some people that will, in part of their religion, they accept self-flagellation and punishment and things of that nature. So the energy that comes from self-abnegation, that come from self-punishment and tears and crying and sorrow and self-deprivation are used to feed that egregore, which is a form of a servitor. The only difference is that it was created by people. So some of us who go to church are actually worshiping, paying attention to egregores that we created. And I believe I already touched on this on a class I dealt with servitors way back. Okay. Some of us, when we are going to our churches and temples and whatnot, we think we're praying to one thing, and that thing has divine origin. We're not aware that it is a divinity of our own creation. And this should give you an idea why people will do well in life or do badly in life, regardless of what religious beliefs are happening. So you can believe in something or someone, and I can believe or choose not to believe in anything or anything or anyone. And I have good, equal chances of success like yourself. Because what you are worshiping as divine is actually an egregore. It's not actually divine. So, regardless of what your holy books are saying, your holy words and holy writings are saying, we come to understand that some of those writings are based on a misconception and a belief that that thing or person being worshipped has divine origins. But in reality, it doesn't have any divine origins. It is a thought form, an egregore that has been fed with so much energy, emotional energy, that it became independently conscious and self acting. It became autonomous. And so, this is the reason why you will go to church and cry to what you cry to, and you will see action. And you will say, oh, it's a miracle. I called on and I got a response. I cried, I threw myself on the ground, I did all these things, I made an offering, and I got a response. Therefore, that thing is a god, or that thing is a goddess, or that thing is, but is actually an egregore. And that is the reason why, if you use that same behaviors and emotions in some other community that doesn't worship that same God that you do, you will also get results. Because now you're feeding their egregore. And if their egregore is programmed to solve the problems or the tasks that are similar to your egregore, you will also get an answer there. And so this is the reason why you'll see somebody, they'll say, oh, over here, I do my thing, I get miracles. And I went to this other place and I went and did my thing and I also got miracles. Therefore, what I'm worshiping over here is the same as what I'm worshiping over here, but it's not. Okay. So I hope you understand what I'm saying now, what I've just said over the past 5 minutes. I hope you understand what I'm pointing at over the past 5 minutes. You have the tulpa. Okay. It's familiar to the Tibetan Buddhists, or the Tibetan Buddhists. Okay. There's they visualize a thought form, energize a thought form, and the specific task of a tulpa is to be a companion, to be a teacher, to be a helper. So it becomes alive like a human being, and you start seeing it like a human being. But anytime they stop feeding it, it dissipates, it disappears. Now, in the Congo, like I mentioned before, they have the Inkisi or the Inkondi, okay? And they have a container within which they house the servitor. And inside that container, they have certain herbs, they have certain animal parts, and so on and so forth. And that's what feeds the servitor. Okay. So let's look at a few examples really quickly. I have some of my notes here. So we have chaos magic servitors based on Western occultism. Okay. So the practitioners in chaos magic, they create servitors to help them with tasks, things that they need help with. Okay. They can create servitors to help them find things, break bad habits, to help them make money, teach them things, provide guidance, okay? Um, Defending their psychic space, okay? So, an example is when a chaos magician creates a servitor who will do a specific thing whenever that magician is in danger. So they can create servitors, a servitor, and say, I want you to start shaking or rattling something, or I want you to start glowing or flashing whenever I'm in a dangerous situation and I need to leave there. And if they've created that servitor properly, that's what's going to happen. They will hear the rattling or they will see the flashing. Okay. And they can link this servitor to a sigil or a picture. Okay. Sketch. Now in Tibet, where they have the tulpas, okay, theirs is a lot more sophisticated. They will create a servitor that can speak, that will have voice, that will have a human form, and can interact with you. Okay, so there's a story here of an explorer, Alexander David Neal, who was from France, who went over there in the 1920s and claimed to have sat with Tibetan Buddhist monks to create a tulpa. Okay. And this tulpa was walking, talking, doing things, and became a little bit too autonomous, so they had to dismantle it. Just imagine the amount of thought energy that went into creating a tulpa. Now, I don't know if they still do that over there in Tibet. If you're from Tibet or been to Tibet, you can let us know. Okay. And it's said that tulpas are used today for spiritual companionship and for healing. So you'll have the monk who will create this tulpa. It can speak, it can talk, it can walk. They will define how it's going to be fed, and they will say, okay, your job is to heal. Whenever we have someone who is sick, we need you to come over here and use energy or whatever methods to help heal this person. Okay. Now you have the Nkisi of the Congo. There, and the Nkisi is the container that holds the energy of this thing. And in places like that, they can use it to catch thieves. If someone is stealing things, pilfering, they can say, go after the person, go and identify the person who has been stealing or wreaking havoc. In some other parts of Africa where they have something similar, they can say, we want you to identify the person who is committing adultery. Who's this person sleeping with my wife? And remember, these are patriarchal systems, so they're more concerned about policing the woman than policing the man. Okay. We want you to, we'll take you into the forest and we want you to start identifying the healing herbs we can use for our healing work. Okay. Or there's disease and stuff going on over here. We're going to place you in this home so that if there's anything creating chaos or disease or whatnot in this household, we want you to deal with it. If it's a person, a human agent, we authorize you to deal with that person. Okay. Now, in the southern part of America, where hoodoo is prevalent, okay, a honey jar, believe it or not, can be a form of a servitor, especially when the person has invested a lot of thought energy into it and gives instructions to that jar. And this is also common in Europe. They do a lot of jar spells in Europe. Okay. And so that jar, with everything that's in it, starts functioning like a servitor. But remember, because it's a honey jar or a specific kind of jar, it only performs that task. So you can't, like, if you have a honey jar that is meant to bring love or sweeten relationships, you can't turn around and say, okay, I need you to bring me money. It's not going to do that because that's not what it was created for. And of course, if you got tired of it, you just open the jar and pour out the honey, game over. Okay. And I did mention the digital servitors that are like AI. Okay. So if you've successfully created a servitor, how will you know that you have successfully created a servitor? Some people say they will feel a presence. Even when they're not thinking about it, they just feel the presence of the servitor. Okay. They will have dreams about it, or symbols, repetitive symbols, especially if that servitor is anchored to a sigil. Okay. Um, it will impinge on your consciousness, especially when it has done that thing that you told it to do. Uh, you may also have the sensation on your body whenever it's around, when you're activating it to start a task. Okay. You might feel goosebumps, things of that nature, pressure. All right. So the I think what I'm going to do for the member class is we'll go through some guide work, because with the member class we'll go through the guide work, and then for advanced members, if we have time, we'll go through a demo. Okay. And we'll look more into examples of modern day servitors that people use. But if you go online, there's a whole bunch of servitors. There's even a guy, uh, 40 servants, and I've mentioned this in member classes. Um, he has a deck of cards that are servitors. And you can buy these cards, and it comes with instructions how to use them. But he, again, has the master cards and the master kill switch for those cards. So whether you use his cards, his servitors, properly or improperly, it won't matter, because he's the only one who has a skill switch, and he has the original cards that he designed. and they're called the 40 servants. Okay. All right. So I want to share, I want to try this technology here. So I want to share a quick image. If you are on Patreon, you have already received, by now you've already received notification of the availability of this poster. I want to share here. So people on Patreon already will have this. Okay. So here's basically the life cycle of a servitor. And sorry it's not showing up. You know how it is. I'm just working out this technology. So, but basically, you have here um, what do you need help with? You need to define the purpose and then emotionally charge the desire and determine how it's going to be fed. Then the next thing is who or what will serve this task. That's a creation of the servitor itself. And you will have to give it clear commands. You can't be ambiguous. You can't say, oh, just whenever I wink or something, do something. No, there has to be very specific commands. And those commands have to be unique so that you don't say it accidentally or someone else says that accidentally. Then there's the activation phase where you tell it to wake up and begin work. And then when you're done with the servitor, work is done, you deactivate it and allow that thought form, activated thought form, or to dissipate. Okay. And at the bottom here, I know you don't see that because my image here is cutting it off. But it says servitors are sacred tools of will. Treat them with clarity, love, and boundaries. Okay. So I hope that today's class, I know it's just like a lot of material. So I was just trying to go through the main points that most people can get. If you haven't given the class a thumbs up, I encourage you to give it a thumbs up. All right. For the guide work, let me see here. I think for members, we can go through a guide work of guided creation ritual. We can do that. All right. So we'll talk about safety. Okay. Don't create a servitor to manipulate others. It usually doesn't end well. Make sure that whatever information you use to create the servitor, you don't forget it, write it down. Because you may think, oh, yeah, I have it all up in my head. And then when it comes time to activate it or deactivate it, then you forgot how to do that. Give your servitor a clear end date or resting protocol. In other words, after this date, stop working, just disappear. If you want it to continue, you have to let it know when I do this or say this, go into rest mode. And when I need it to start, here's the code or here's what needs to happen before you are activated. So, then the other instruction here is never neglect or forget thought forms. They can become unstable if left without closure. So remember when I spoke earlier about community or lineage servitors? Okay, people abandon them or neglect them because nobody knows much about them or knows how to deactivate them or how to feed them. If they become unstable, okay, anything can happen. All right, there can be a lot of good things happening or a lot of not so good things happening. Okay. if they're left abandoned. Now, Ebony Sherry says, do you think it's worth having a servitor? Yes, it is. It is. It is. But it's a lot of work. It's not just as simple as sitting here and going, okay, here we go. It requires a lot of energy to create. It requires a lot of energy. And if you've created your servitor correctly, once you're done, you're going to be exhausted because there's going to be a lot of your mental energy that went into creating it. You'll be exhausted. So that's why you want to plan it out. You saw that cycle poster that I shared. You want to plan it out first, so that as you're going through your little ritual of creating that servitor, um, you don't lose focus or forget what you're supposed to do. Now, there are some folks, some occultists out there who have published, and they make it publicly available, instructions for working with servitors that they already took the time to create, or they will say, here's a way to create your own servitor. Have a go at it. And some people are successful with it, and some people are not successful with it. You know, it might be easier to work with a servitor that's been created by somebody else. Okay, so you might find one, okay, hey, I want to get some money. So you go look for servitors related to wealth and you work with those, knowing that it's not your responsibility to deactivate them because they're already activated and you're not the only person using them. So once you're done, you can just say to the servitor, well, thank you very much for helping me. You can depart in peace, and it will go. Okay, Miss Allen says you never knew the name, heard about it. Yeah. So I will encourage folks to go look up the golem. There are many very interesting stories, Jewish tales about the golem, how they came to be, the rabbis who had the power to make them. Some rabbis were more powerful than others in creating and making golem and things of that nature. Right. All right, so let's go ahead and end the class. If you need me for your consultations, divinations, dream interpretations, and spiritual practice coaching, please go to my website at tochi.us or drtochi.com. I have added a new kind of divination called a rune divination, and I am now offering that for those who are already on a spiritual path and who need spiritual guidance for their spiritual path. Spiritual guidance for the spiritual path as a rune divination. So I've added that to my website. Okay. I'm also selling gold now. Where are my gold pieces? So I'm also uploading that to my website. Okay. So for those of us who are determined to live our best rich auntie life. Okay, so um, I'm taking my time to do it because I actually enjoy website design. So I am doing a lot of the website design myself. Okay, and you might find this there. I think this one goes on. Yeah, this one goes on like that. You know, and it comes with matching earrings and a matching it comes on with a matching earring. So again, I encourage you to start looking at ways you will develop your streams of income. I have another pretty one here. I haven't loaded this one up yet. This one is pretty too. It's a gold necklace. So this is all Indian gold, gold plated. Okay, there's a whole bunch of them I have here. So that's project, one of my projects that I'm working on. All right. So if you're interested in that, yeah, they're actually pretty. I mean, like the bracelet one. Here's a bracelet. I was working on doing the AI to demonstrate this and to model it. And that's been interesting. And speaking of AI, if you are an older person, I encourage you to start learning whatever you can about AI. Okay, here's another piece. These are really, really nice, lovely pieces. You know, yeah, that's another lovely piece. See that? So they go, and these they come with their with earrings. They come with their matching earrings, and some come with it. I like this one. This one I would definitely wear. See that? I'm trying to hold that straight. Okay. Yeah, like that. See that? And that's what it looks like. All right. So it's I would encourage you. Yeah, and this other one, this is what it looks like. Yeah. Yeah. So it's the era of the rich auntie. Okay. So if you all see me looking all rich and luxurious, you will know what's going on. And then this, I mean, there's a whole bunch of them I have here. There's a whole bunch. Here's this other one. Doesn't that look pretty? Yeah. And part of what I'm also learning how to do is how do you how do you select the kind of jewelry that people might be interested in, because I tend towards simpler styles. Okay. I don't mind a little bit of embellishment, but I tend towards simpler styles. Now, there are people who love the real elaborate because there are some that I saw that were like breastplates of righteousness. Okay. There were some that I saw that they were just like absolute architectural constructions. Okay, I wouldn't wear that. I mean, if somebody else wore them, I would admire it, but I wouldn't wear it myself because it would just be a little bit too much for me. So, part of the learning process is how do you select stuff that you're kind of thinking, yeah, people would like this, or people who are like me might like this, and then figuring out, well, who is like me. So, remember again, yeah, so I'm uploading it. Yeah, Sentimzulu. Yeah, I'm uploading it. All of that is for sale. And, if you want something for a wedding or an event, or you want one of those things that you can keep for yourself, you know, and you have to take care of it, so they come with care instructions. So I'm loading that up on my website. I have courses on divination. I have free classes on divination. I do encourage people to take the time to learn some form of divination that you can use for yourself. I have Bible divination, Quran divination, book divination, coin divination, candle divination, um, pendulum divination. Develop a skill in these things. That's what I would say. Okay, develop a skill so that for simpler issues that you need guidance on, you can perform your own divination. So that when things are a little bit more complex, you have a starting point. You can say, okay, I did my own divination and did this and did this and did that, but this situation has become a little bit more complex. Now I'm going to go seek the help of a spiritual practitioner. I do encourage people to learn some form of divination. And remember, we're here for practical spirituality. I'm not teaching you to be dependent on me. the end point is that you can start doing a whole bunch of things for yourself. Remember, that's the point of this family. That's the point of the teaching, not that every little thing that goes on in your life, you have to look for Papa Dr. Tochi. There are certain things you should be able to start solving for yourself, by yourself in your life. And that's my goal. Okay. So I'm upgrading my website. I have a whole bunch of things there now. I have spiritual counseling in there. The rune divination is a new one, and some other things that I'm gonna put in there, and some upgrades and stuff. So just been busy, busy, busy. Okay. All right. We're thankful to our Creator, our guardian spirits, our ancestors, and our spirit guides for today's knowledge, and ask that we be guided to use it wisely and profitably. Ashe, Isai, Kamaga, Dakosa, Lasedi, Okwande, Nebabo. It is done, it is finished, it's completing in whole. So Morobe. Thank you for coming to class. And now I want to go eat some of that pounded yam. Did y'all see that pounded yam I posted? I posted here yesterday. I went to this place and they had this yam. It was actually pounded by a man. He was in the kitchen with a pestle and mortar. He was like pounding this yam. And it's like so sweet and so soft and you know. And I had it with the egusi soup, and so I have some leftovers. So I want to go eat the leftovers now. It was really really nice. If you can get a guy to pound the yam or pound the fufu for you, um, because they put so much muscle into it while they pound at it, it comes with this really really nice consistency that you can't get with machines. You really can't get with a machine. So let me go eat that and drip oil all over my clothes as usual. I'll see y'all later. Love y'all.